He needed some time off. My name's Travis Delaney. I'm 34, work in agricultural machinery procurement for Ironwood Forge, and I'd just spent 3 months planning the perfect vacation for my parents. 7 days in New Zealand, business class flights, luxury lodges overlooking Lake Taupo, private vineyard tours through Marlborough, even booked a helicopter ride to Milford Sound, because my mom always talked about wanting to see fjords. I pulled into their driveway in Denver at 4 a.m. engine running, ready to drive them to the airport. This wasn't just any trip. It was my thank you gift before I moved to Berlin for a new position with our European division. Quality time with Russell and Diane Delaney before an ocean separated us for who knows how long. My mom came out first, wheeling 2 suitcases, smiling that nervous smile she gets when she's about to deliver bad news. Behind her walked my Uncle Boyd, 58 years old, hadn't held a steady job in over a decade, and carrying a duffel bag like he was heading to summer camp. "Where's Dad?" I asked through the window. "Inside," Mom chirped, but we had a little change of plans. Then my dad emerged, clapping Boyd on the back like they were old war buddies heading off to some reunion. "Son," Russell said, walking over to my window with that matter-of-fact tone he uses when he's already made up his mind. "Your uncle's been real stressed lately. Lost that warehouse job last month. We figured this trip might lift his spirits. He'll go with us instead." I stared at him. "I'm sorry, what?" "We already changed the ticket at the airline," my mom added, loading Boyd's bag into my trunk. "You'll understand one day. Besides, you travel all the time for work." Boyd stood there grinning, hands in his pockets like this was the most natural thing in the world. Like I hadn't spent my savings and vacation time organizing a trip specifically for my parents. Like he hadn't been borrowing money from them for the past 5 years while spinning stories about job interviews that never panned out. I didn't yell. I didn't slam the car into reverse and leave them standing there. I just sat for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, watching my breath fog up the windshield in the cold Denver morning. "All right then," I said finally. "Enjoy." The drive to the airport was quiet except for Boyd talking about how he'd always wanted to see the Southern Hemisphere. My parents nodded along like this had been the plan all along. Like I was just the chauffeur. I dropped them at departures, helped with their bags, and watched them walk away. My mom turned back once to wave. Dad never looked back. Something had broken that morning. I just didn't know how much yet. Growing up, Boyd was the fun uncle, the one who showed up to family barbecues with stories about his latest venture or girlfriend. He'd worked construction, sold insurance, tried his hand at landscaping. Always had a reason why the last job didn't work out and a plan for the next big opportunity. Somewhere along the way, the stories stopped being charming and started being excuses. My parents never saw it, or maybe they chose not to. When Boyd got evicted from his apartment 3 years ago, they let him stay in their basement, temporarily. When his truck got repossessed, my dad co-signed for a new one. When Boyd needed money for job training programs that never seemed to lead anywhere, my mom would slip him cash and tell him not to mention it to me. I'd tried talking to them about it. Gently at first, then more directly. "He's family," my dad would say. "You don't turn your back on family." "He's going through a rough patch," my mom would add. "Everyone deserves a second chance." Boyd had been through about 15 rough patches by my count, but I'd learned to keep my mouth shut. They were adults. They could make their own decisions about their money and their house, but this was different. I'd booked this trip 6 months ago, right after getting the Berlin offer. The company was paying for my relocation, but I wanted to do something meaningful with my parents before I left. New Zealand had been my mom's dream destination since she was young. She'd collected travel magazines about Queenstown and Rotorua, talked about the hot springs in the wine country. I'd researched every detail. Found a boutique lodge in Hawke's Bay where they could watch the sunrise over the vineyards. Booked dinner at a restaurant overlooking Waitemata Harbor. Even arranged for them to meet a Maori cultural group in Rotorua because my dad had always been interested in indigenous history. The whole thing cost me nearly $15,000. Worth every penny to see my parents experience something extraordinary together, and they'd given it to Boyd. The warning signs had been there. Boyd asking casual questions about the itinerary when he came for dinner last month. My mom being vague when I asked if they were excited about the trip. My dad mentioning that Boyd seemed really down lately and maybe needed some cheering up. I should have seen it coming. Should have known that their soft spot for Boyd's problems would override their appreciation for what I'd tried to give them. But I'd trusted them. Believed that this trip meant something to them too. Now driving home from the airport alone, I realized I'd been naive. In their minds, Boyd's needs would always come before my gestures. The question was what I planned to do about it. I sat in my truck outside their house for an hour after dropping them off, engine running, heat blasting against the February cold, watching their empty driveway and thinking about how easily they'd dismissed 3 months of my planning. It wasn't really about the money, though $15,000 wasn't pocket change for me. It wasn't even about Boyd getting a free vacation he hadn't earned. It was about what my parents had chosen. When faced with my thoughtful gift and Boyd's vague neediness, they'd picked him without a second thought. My phone buzzed. Text from my mom. Boarding now. Thank you so much for understanding, honey. We'll send pictures. Understanding. Like I'd agreed to this. Like I'd smiled and said, of course, give my vacation to Uncle Boyd instead. I drove home and sat at my kitchen table with my laptop staring at the confirmation emails, flight details, hotel reservations, restaurant bookings, everything perfectly timed and researched. Then I opened a new browser window and started typing. First, I canceled the hotel reservations. All of them. The luxury lodge in Hawke's Bay, the boutique place in Queenstown, the spa resort in Rotorua. Clicked through each cancellation confirmation, watching my deposits get refunded. Next, the rental car. Gone. The restaurant reservations. Canceled. The helicopter tour to Milford Sound. Canceled. The wine tasting appointments. Canceled. Each click felt like closing a door that my parents had chosen not to walk through. But I wasn't done. I opened my email and started composing a message to New Zealand Immigration Services. Professional tone, factual details, information about Boyd Delaney, United States citizen, possibly attempting to enter New Zealand while facing an unresolved legal matter in Colorado. Nothing false. Boyd actually did have that outstanding court case for unpaid fines. Something he'd mentioned casually at Christmas, laughing about how the system was too slow to catch up with him. I attached Boyd's full name, date of birth, and flight information, suggested they might want to look into his background before allowing entry. Sent the email at 11 p.m. Denver time, which would be early morning in Auckland. Then I called my travel agent and changed my own flight to Berlin. Instead of leaving next month as planned, I'd be gone in 3 days. The company had said I could start early if needed. Suddenly, I needed to. I poured myself a whiskey and sat back in my chair. No anger, no shouting, no dramatic confrontation. Just quiet, careful action. My parents had made their choice. Boyd's comfort mattered more than my effort. They valued his temporary happiness over the relationship I'd tried to honor. Fine. They could deal with the consequences of that choice. I raised my glass to the empty room. Enjoy New Zealand, I said quietly. Tomorrow I'd start packing for Berlin. Tonight I'd wait for my phone to ring. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m. the next morning. International number. I let it go to voicemail, then again at 6:15 a.m. This time I answered. Travis? My dad's voice, strained and tired. We're at the airport in Auckland. How's New Zealand? I asked, sipping my coffee. That's what I'm calling about. There's been some kind of mix-up. They pulled Boyd aside at customs and now they're saying there's an issue with his entry. I set my coffee down slowly. What kind of issue? Something about a legal matter back home. They have him in some office asking questions. Your mother's beside herself. We've been sitting here for 2 hours. That's terrible, I said. What legal matter? You know, those old traffic fines from last year. Boyd said he was handling it through his lawyer, but apparently it shows up in their system as unresolved. Boyd didn't have a lawyer. Boyd had been ignoring court summons for months, joking about how they'd never track him down. But my dad didn't know that. Where are you staying tonight? I asked. That's another problem. When we got to the hotel, they said our reservation was canceled. Some error in their system. Same thing happened with our rental car. I walked to my window looking out at the Denver skyline. All your reservations got canceled? Every single one. The hotel manager showed us the cancellation confirmations in their computer, said they came through yesterday. We're trying to find somewhere else, but everything's booked. Peak tourist season, apparently. How's Mom handling it? She's pretty upset. Keeps asking how this could happen. Boyd's still with the immigration people. We don't know if they're going to let him in the country or not. I could hear my mother's voice in the background, talking to someone at what sounded like an information desk. Stress in her tone. The kind of helpless frustration she got when things went wrong and she couldn't fix them. Maybe you should come home, I suggested. We can't just leave Boyd here. And we spent so much on this trip. Your mom was really looking forward to it. My mom was looking forward to the trip I'd planned for her. The trip she'd given away. Dad, can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you talk to me before changing the plans, before giving Boyd my ticket? Silence on the other end. Then, your uncle needed this, Travis. He's been in a bad place since losing that warehouse job. You're young. You travel all the time for work. You'll have other opportunities. This wasn't about opportunity. This was about spending time with you and Mom before I moved to Berlin. You'll be back for visits. That's not the point. Another long pause. Are you saying this is somehow your fault? These reservation problems? I almost laughed. Even now, stuck in an airport on the other side of the world with his brother-in-law detained by immigration, my dad couldn't imagine that actions might have consequences. No, Dad. I'm saying things have a way of working out how they're supposed to. That doesn't help us right now. We're stranded in Auckland with nowhere to stay and no car. Boyd might get deported. Your mother hasn't eaten anything since the plane food. There are hotels near the airport, probably expensive, but available. We can't afford airport hotels for a week, Travis. Not after spending so much on the flights. The flights they'd changed without asking me. The trip they'd redesigned around Boyd's needs instead of appreciating what I'd offered them. Maybe Boyd can help with costs, I said, since he's the one who wanted to come. He's unemployed, you know that. Then maybe this wasn't the right trip for him. Travis, what's gotten into you? This isn't like you. He was right. The old me would have jumped on a plane to Auckland, booked new hotels with my credit card, smoothed everything over, and pretended it was fine. The old me would have absorbed their crisis as my responsibility, fixed their problems, and never mentioned how they'd dismissed my original gift. But something had shifted when I watched them walk away at Denver International Airport with Boyd in my place. I'm sure you'll figure it out, Dad. You're good at making decisions. You and Mom and Boyd. Travis, I need to go. I'm flying to Berlin tomorrow, starting my new job early. Tomorrow? But you weren't supposed to leave for another month. Plans change, I said, and hung up. My phone rang 16 more times that day. I answered none of them. Instead, I spent the afternoon at Ironwood Forge, wrapping up loose ends and transferring my projects to colleagues. My supervisor, Janet, had been surprised when I asked to accelerate my departure date, but the Berlin office was happy to have me start early. Family emergency? She asked, processing my paperwork. Family clarity, I said. That evening, I started packing. Clothes, books, a few personal items. I'd already arranged to rent out my house furnished so most of my stuff could stay. I was folding shirts when my doorbell rang. Boyd's truck in my driveway. I opened the door to find him standing there, still in his travel clothes, looking like he'd been awake for 36 hours straight. They sent us back, he said without preamble. I figured. Immigration wouldn't let me enter. Said there were red flags in my background check. Took them 6 hours to process everything and put us on a return flight. I leaned against my doorframe. That's unfortunate. Your parents spent the whole flight home trying to figure out what went wrong. All those canceled reservations, then the immigration thing. Your mom cried for 3 hours. Where are they now? Home. Exhausted. Your dad's trying to call the travel insurance company, see if they can get any money back from the flights. Boyd stepped closer and I caught the smell of airport coffee and stress sweat. Funny thing, though, he continued. Immigration officer mentioned that someone had flagged my entry, sent them information about my legal issues, called it a tip from a concerned citizen. I said nothing. Real specific information, Travis. My full name, date of birth, flight details. Even mentioned those old court fines I've been dealing with. Sounds like someone did their homework. Yeah, someone who knew exactly when I'd be arriving and why I might have problems at customs. We stared at each other. Boyd's eyes were bloodshot from travel, but sharp with understanding. You want to tell me why you sabotaged your own parents' vacation? It wasn't their vacation anymore, it was yours. They invited me. I didn't force my way onto the trip. No, you just moped around their house talking about stress and unemployment until they felt guilty enough to give you what I'd planned for them. Boyd's face hardened. Those old people have been carrying you your whole life. Paying for your college, helping with your down payment on this house, bragging about your big-shot job to anyone who'll listen. And when they finally ask for one thing, taking care of family when family needs help, you throw a tantrum. Taking care of family? I laughed. Boyd, you've been unemployed for 3 years. You live in their basement rent-free, borrow their car, eat their food, and let my dad co-sign your loans. When exactly do you plan to take care of them? I'm going through a rough patch. You've been going through a rough patch since the Clinton administration. Boyd stepped back, jaw working like he was chewing words he wanted to spit out. Your parents are good people, he said finally. Better than you deserve. You're right, they are good people. Too good to see that you're using them. Too generous to notice that you take everything and give nothing back. And you're what? Teaching them a lesson by ruining their trip? I'm showing them what happens when they choose your comfort over my effort. They wanted to prioritize your needs? Fine. They can deal with the consequences. Boyd turned and walked back to his truck without another word. I watched him drive away, then finished packing. Tomorrow, I'd be in Berlin. Tonight, I'd sleep better than I had in months. The call came at 7 a.m. just as I was loading my last suitcase into the truck. Travis. My dad's voice flat and tired. We need to talk. I'm heading to the airport, Dad. Boyd told us what you did. I stopped loading and straightened up. What did I do? The immigration tip, canceling our reservations, sabotaging the whole trip. Sabotaging? You gave my trip to someone else. I just made sure you got the experience you chose. That's not... He stopped and I heard him take a deep breath. Why would you do this to your mother? She didn't sleep last night. Keeps asking what she did wrong. She didn't do anything wrong, neither did you. You just made a choice. We were trying to help family. You were enabling Boyd, again, like you have for the past 3 years. Silence on the other end. I could picture him in their kitchen, probably staring out the window at Boyd's truck in their driveway, trying to figure out how this had become his problem to solve. Your mother wants to know if you'll come over before your flight. To talk. There's nothing to talk about. She's your mother, Travis. And I'm your son. The one who spent 3 months planning something special for you. The one who wanted to create memories before moving overseas. But that didn't matter when Boyd needed cheering up. We thought you'd understand. I do understand. I understand that Boyd's temporary feelings matter more than my permanent gestures. I understand that you'd rather manage his problems than appreciate my efforts. I understand exactly where I stand in your priorities. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, closing my truck's tailgate. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been asking me before changing my trip. Fair would have been considering how I'd feel about my vacation being handed to someone who's never worked for anything. Fair would have been recognizing that I was trying to do something meaningful before leaving the country. We didn't think. That's right, you didn't think. You just reacted to Boyd's latest crisis and assumed I'd be fine with whatever you decided. I got in my truck and started the engine. My flight to Berlin left in 4 hours and I still needed to return my rental car and check in. Travis, please. Your mother is heartbroken. Tell Mom I love her. Tell her I'll call from Berlin when I get settled. What about Boyd? What about him? He's family. So am I, Dad. So am I. I hung up and pulled out of my driveway for the last time as a Denver resident. At the airport, I checked my phone one final time before boarding. 3 missed calls from my parents, 2 text messages from my mom asking me to reconsider, and 1 voicemail from Boyd. I deleted them all without listening. The flight to Berlin was peaceful. 17 hours to think about family dynamics, personal boundaries, and the difference between loyalty and enabling. I read a book, watched 2 movies, and slept better than I had in weeks. When we landed in Berlin, I turned on my phone to find a text from my dad. "Your mother says she understands why you're angry. Call when you're ready." I put the phone away and focused on immigration, baggage claim, and getting to my new apartment. Understanding was a start, but changing behavior was something else entirely. Either way, I was 3,000 miles away from their drama now. Time to build something new. 3 weeks into my Berlin assignment, my phone rang during lunch break. International number again. "Travis?" My mom's voice, clearer than before, steadier. "Hi, Mom. How are you?" "Better. We need to tell you something." I waited. "We asked Boyd to move out." I set down my coffee. "When?" "Last week. Your dad found out he'd been using our credit card for online purchases. $1,500 worth of electronics and clothes. When we confronted him, he said he'd pay us back from his next job." "What next job?" "Exactly what your father asked." She paused. "Boyd got angry, said we were being unreasonable, that families should stick together during hard times. Then he mentioned the New Zealand trip, said you'd turned us against him. And?" "Your dad looked at him and said, 'Maybe we should have turned against you a long time ago.'" I leaned back in my chair, watching traffic pass by my Berlin office window. "We gave him 30 days to find somewhere else to live," my mom continued. "He's staying with his friend Kevin now, making it sound like we kicked him out for no reason." "How do you feel about it?" "Relieved," she said immediately. "And stupid. We should have seen what you saw years ago. You were being kind. We were being foolish. There's a difference between helping someone and letting them take advantage of you." "What changed your mind?" "The trip. Sitting in that Auckland airport, watching Boyd argue with immigration officers, seeing him blame everyone except himself for his problems, and then realizing that you'd warned us in your own way and we'd chosen not to listen." A long pause. "Your dad wants to talk to you." "Put him on." "Travis." My dad's voice, gruff but warmer than our last conversation. "I owe you an apology." "You don't owe me anything, Dad." "Yes, I do. We took your gift and threw it away. Treated your thoughtfulness like it didn't matter. You had every right to be angry." "I wasn't angry. I was disappointed." "Same result. We hurt you and you showed us what that felt like." I looked out at the German street scene below, people walking to work, tourists checking maps, normal life continuing in a new city. "Are we okay?" he asked. "We're okay." 6 months later, I flew back to Denver for Christmas. My parents picked me up at the airport, both of them standing at arrivals with coffee and smiles. The drive home felt different. Lighter. My dad asked about my work in Berlin. My mom wanted to hear about the Christmas markets and the food. No mention of Boyd until I brought him up. "How's he doing?" "Working construction again," my dad said. "Kevin got him a job with his crew. Boyd seems to think we'll invite him for Christmas dinner." "Will you?" My parents looked at each other. "No," my mom said firmly. "We're learning about boundaries." That evening, we sat in their living room, looking through photo albums, pictures of family trips from when I was young, holiday gatherings, birthday celebrations. Boyd appeared in several of them, always smiling, always at the center of attention. "You know what we want to do?" my mom said suddenly. "What?" "Take that New Zealand trip, the real one, the way you planned it." "Mom, you don't need to." "We want to," my dad interrupted. "With you, this time. When you can get vacation from Berlin." I thought about vineyard tours and fjord helicopter rides, about sitting with my parents watching sunrise over Hawke's Bay, about sharing something beautiful instead of managing someone else's chaos. "I'd like that," I said. Later that night, I walked through their basement. Boyd's room was empty except for some old furniture and boxes, clean and quiet, ready for something better. My phone buzzed. Text from a colleague in Berlin. "How's Denver?" I typed back. Exactly what I needed. Sometimes the best gift you can give people is showing them what they're worth defending.